You are listening to the Kinetic Man Podcast. I'm Stuart.
And I'm David, and we want to walk with you on the journey to living a life defined by uncommon action that is full of purpose, adventure, and meaningful relationships. Our goal is to refine our why while helping you find yours, and together achieve our best and highest purpose. In the end, we'll drive each other to leave the potential life behind and become kinetic men.
What's up, everybody? Hey, this is Stu. And John Mark Comer, one of my favorite authors and podcast hosts, said once that one of the main jobs of a parent is to study your children and help unfold them into the man or woman that God made them to be. I think that we do this through asking good questions and engaging in conversation. I don't know about you, but I've asked my kids before, like, "Hey, how was your day?" And their standard answer is good or fine, and that doesn't get very far. So in the Kinetic Man Mastermind, we challenge men to ask good questions and to engage in conversations so we can get to know our kids better. So what we did was come up with 100 questions. We came up with a list of really good questions to ask that will engage in conversation with your kids, and they're awesome. Here's an example of one. If you wanted to make everyone on the planet smile, how would you do it? Or if you had a time machine, where would you go and why? You'll be amazed at this conversation that you have with your kids when you ask these good questions. Ask them in the car when you're taking them to school. Ask them around the dinner table. Engage in that and be ready to answer those yourself. You'll be amazed at what happens. If you like this list, you can email us. Email takeaction@thekineticman.com. Again, that's takeaction@thekineticman.com, and we'll send you that list of questions for free. Put 100 questions in the subject, and we'll send it right over. Take action, engage with your family, ask good questions. See ya.
Men, Kinetic Men retreats. If you've not been to one, we're on our 4th iteration, September 27 through 29, Empire, Colorado. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You will come there, one man, you'll leave a changed man. You're going to be surrounded by a group of ninja individuals. You're going to eat. We're going to keep you active so that you don't get too fat because the food is amazing. You're going to be spoiled with just the level of the retreat. But I'll tell you, it is such a life-changing event that you are absolutely missing out if you do not participate in one of these events. So come join us. Go to thekineticman.com. Sign up. Be different. Be better. Do something. Get it.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening to this. I'm excited about this conversation. The less David talks, the better. We have 2 guests on today, so there's more opportunity for them to talk and David to talk less. I
think we all, with the raise of hands, most people are listening to this. They can't see the video, but raise of hands. I think most people already think you've hit the word limit that we're all comfortable with. I think we're all good. If you, and actually we took a vote beforehand as well. You did not come onto the screen initially with your camera on. And we actually all drew great comfort in that, particularly after you did turn your camera on. It's a bit disconcerting. So,
well, there's 2 ways I see this coming about. You got Team Bald Guy there with you two, and then me and Stu, or it's just everyone against David. One way or the other, David loses.
I think there's a bunch of aviators on here, so I think it's actually going to be really hard to do an interview because you're all going to want to talk over each other because you're also, in good aviator fashion, all very self-important. And so I may be the mediator for a change of this conversation.
Nailed it.
Well, so what we do have on this call are 4 fine military veterans, and we're going to get into a lot of discussions about being a veteran and about, transitioning from active duty or reserves to veteran status. David and I went through it about a year ago, and still have lots of lessons learned and going through that process along the way. And I know, Jason, you've been through it as well, and you're a little bit older than us, right? Like just a few
fine
years.
Wine. Jason, fine wine.
Carry the 1 or so, and pretty much. I'm the gray beard here for sure.
Gray beard,
the bald dude that's the gray beard. Yes.
And then Aaron, fellow Navy pilot veteran in the helicopter world, and I know you've had some lessons learned along the ways as well, and are passionate about helping others get through this. So if we could, let's just start with who you guys are, a little bit about backgrounds, and then we'll get into it.
All
Jason,
right.
you go first.
You got it. So, hi, my name is Jason Anderson. Just like Stu was saying, 20-year Air Force veteran, retired in 2014. So, yeah, I'm a little bit older than these guys. In 2014, just the quick summation, had a great career, loved it. Flew the C-130 for the first half. Second half was like wildly different international. I ended up becoming the second ever C-130 exchange pilot to the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force. So I was in a Japanese squadron for 5 years, if you can believe it.
That's awesome.
A lot of background behind that. Obviously speak Japanese. And then once you do that, and there's like one GS-11 in Hawaii that knows you live, and they still send you a paycheck. Honestly, it's like, how do I plug back into the big USAF? So ended up actually cold calling the Pentagon one day. No joke, cold calling the Pentagon. So I've been kind of an individual contributor, honestly, in my last half of my career, because I was either going to go to PACOM, PACAF, so in Hawaii, or the Pentagon, all the P's. Cold called a guy named Raj Shah, and it was just funny because who are you? What do you want? And I was like, hey, I'm this guy over on the island. Some GS-11 knows I'm alive, but no one else does. And he goes, send me your resume. And I was like, okay. So next thing you know, 24 hours later, I'm the country director for Secretary of the Air Force International Affairs. I then, over the next 6 years, I spent at the Pentagon. It was awesome assignment. Sold them about $15 billion worth of equipment and training. So it was fun. And that teed me up for my post-military career, where 2014 moved back to Wyoming, picked up a remote job before remote was cool. Ended up doing business development. And then a year later was promoted to the head of business for Japan, Korea, Taiwan for a $6 billion company. That's where PreVeteran started. I'll kind of stop there. But the teaser for you and your audience is, even though from all outward appearance and measuring of, getting a job, doing well, excelling, all those things, I did well. But the bottom line is I wasn't ready. I was not ready for those roles at all. And that's where PreVeteran came from.
Yeah, I love that, Jason. And we will get into that because that plays into the first question I'll ask once Aaron introduces himself as well. But I do have two things before we go to Aaron. One, what was the rank that you retired at?
I retired as Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel. Awesome. So 5. Okay. And then second question is, are you still currently in Wyoming?
Yes.
Okay. So we're doing a little while longer. We're doing a 14er on Thursday. I am cordially inviting you to drive. We're so close. Drive out here and do the 14 with her Thursday morning.
Ooh, that drive, I've done those drives. That drive is a little longer than it's a long drive, man.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where in Wyoming he is.
That's true. I'm assuming Cheyenne.
Yeah.
No. So check this out. So like I am closer to the capital of Utah and Idaho than I am to Cheyenne.
That's a hike. Well, then just
7 hours from Cheyenne driving.
Just come out Wednesday. Wednesday. You can stay at my place and we'll go hiking on Thursday.
Done.
All right, Aaron. Aaron, what's up, man?
Yeah, hey guys, Aaron Ingram. So I'm the director of operations at PreVeteran now, but kind of winding it back to starting off my military career. So I commissioned in 2012, kind of coming out of the academy, one of those guys. And starting off going through flight school, it takes about 2 years. I went into the maritime pipeline. So I ended up doing my multi-engine training, getting my wings, and then I was one of the first classes that it was kind of 50-50, where half of us went to the P8 and half of us went to the P3. And I was one of the P8 guys. So I went to a squadron that was just getting there safe for flight and, getting ready to fly the new plane, the P8. And I went off and did that for 4 years, with that squadron. I kind of got extended a little bit because they had gone through that transition, but that ended up teeing me up for getting out of my sea tour later, which was a good deal. So did that time in the P8, did a couple deployments to Okinawa Pacific Theater, spent a lot of time in the South China Sea and interacting with China out there, which was a good time. kind of coming out of that, I rotated into the C-12 world and became a station pilot out in Okinawa. And I took my wife and 2 kids at the time. My wife was pregnant and I had 2 kids at the time out to Okinawa in 2018. And I was there for 3 years and we loved it out there. It was incredible tour. I enjoyed the flying. I enjoyed the missions. We were kind of just doing logistics and stuff like that. But for having a young family, it was the perfect way to kind of round out my time in the Navy. And then luckily I was able to get out after that. So I did 10 years total, separated out of that. But as I was looking at, what's next, what am I going to do after the military? I was kind of conflicted because I knew a lot of my buddies were at the airlines and flying commercial side. And because I had 737 time and all these things, it just sort of made sense to go that route. But then when I found out more about the lifestyle, I was like, well, I'm leaving the military because I want to be home more and I want to be around for my wife and kids. And it sounds like if I go to the airlines, I'm going to be doing these commutes to other cities. And then most of the time I'm going to be doing RONs where I'm staying overnight, not at home, not with my wife, which just was kind of a deal breaker for me in the whole proposition. So I was like, well, money's not worth it to go that route unless there's some other flying option I don't know about where that's not the case. I don't want to do that. So what other options are out there? I start looking at the business world. I had been invested in real estate, as Stu knows, had been doing that in my last 4 or 5 years in the Navy. So I had some kind of side hustle set up, but trying to navigate what's next and what does that look like? And that's how I ended up hearing about PreVeteran first and then talking to Jason on the phone and being in one of his first courses that he did, running students through. So I got a ton out of that program. It was completely different than what I experienced with anything else. And it really just shifted my mindset on giving me forward steps to take that were actually efficient and made sense towards my goals. And I didn't find anything else like that out there. So really got a lot out of the program, was able to successfully transition out. I had a job in commercial real estate development once I was on terminal leave, and I negotiated a higher salary through that transaction, even though I had never worked in the industry. So through all the stuff I learned in the course, I just saw how powerful it was that I could do something totally different, and not only do something totally different, but get an interview and get a job in something I've never done and negotiate a higher salary, which to me was, if you would have told me that, 6 months before I got out, I'd be like, there's no way that's going to happen. But that's how things worked out. And then, beginning this year, Jason called me up and said, hey, PreVeteran's growing. I need some help. And I had been advocating on the side. And so he invited me to join the team. And that's how I came to work at PreVeteran full time. So that's my story so far.
I love that. And there's a few takeaways that I want to just highlight before my first question. So Jason, you said that, and Stu and I experienced this very thing. You said that the things that most veterans or most military members before they transition, the thing that most of us look at is like, hey, do I have a job lined up? And Aaron, you said something as well that a lot of folks just step into the quote unquote the obvious option, right? They don't put the time necessarily, or even have potentially the self-confidence to know, or the tools to help them to know that they are able to do a number of different things because of the skill sets that they have. And there is really, especially for veterans who are in high stress situations that are have to make decisions and have all these skills, they have leadership ability and have all these skills. There truly is no obvious option, right? Like you can create that option, and we'll talk about the course more here shortly. So that there's 2 points there. The one being, you think that you have everything lined up, right? Stu and I had a couple businesses, we were doing things, and we're like, oh man, we're good to go. And then it's like, oh wow, I'm experiencing, what is this thing I'm experiencing that I've never experienced in my entire life? Oh wow, that's anxiety. Okay, that's a new one for me. That's something I had not ever struggled with, right? And it was something very different than having a job lined up. It was a different thing, and you said that beautifully, Jason. I just wasn't ready, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. And then, the obvious option, Aaron, to your point, and just recognizing too, the last point, the third thing that really stuck out to me is that most of us, as we go through this transition, our resource is what? It's the VA, right? And you get hit with these hundreds of slides and just this overwhelming amount of data, and just a significant just fire hose. And you're like, oh, I don't even know what to do. Like I didn't have a doctor's appointment. I just had my first doctor's appointment a year plus after getting out. Like I just had it. And I've got, 11 orthopedic surgeries and all kinds of stuff. So like it takes a toll, and it's a highly stressful too. So for you throw on top of that, I need to provide somehow. What am I going to do? And that's what I love about this course. But before we get into the course and those specifics, just for both of you real quick, I love this question. Our third partner in the Kinetic Man, Steven, always says, hey, are all military transitions, is it a dumpster fire? Like he asks that question every time, right? He's like, is everybody's transition a dumpster fire? And I just want to ask you that question, not only to hear your answer, but also to give all of our listeners who may be going through any kind of transition, give them permission to be like, this is a dumpster fire. Like to give them, to validate the emotions of, wow, I don't have everything, all the answers. I don't have everything figured out. And you know what? That's okay.
Well, I'll go first, and then Aaron, I'm sure will have some add-ins as well. So, is it a dumpster fire? The way the market is currently structured, yes. Let me add a few brush strokes to that. So, we talk about it all the time now, but we label that market that's a dumpster fire, military transition 1.0 market. We will argue all day long, and I think very credibly, that the way it is set up currently with the big government program TAP kind of leading the way, it's setting up people to fail, unfortunately. Now, I will also say I'm not going to blame TAP for that. I'm just going to say it sets up the market because having been in private industry now for 9 years, right, and over a wide variety of roles, there's no other organization literally on the planet that has to deal with volume, like 200,000 people per year. And what they don't recognize, because, they kind of employ or deploy rather a 20th century education model, what you just articulated is, how do you deal with 160 to 200,000 people? Well, you just have to provide them resources, right? And that was the fire hose you were talking about. And to be honest, they're meeting like a fiduciary duty to do that. What it's not doing by any measure is getting you to change, right? Which is what fundamentally has to happen. And I know you guys are about intention, which we completely agree with. So what we do now is what's really important. It doesn't have to be a dumpster fire. In fact, you could have complete control. So the reason why people can't think of that yet is honestly, our message hasn't gotten out, which is why we're with you guys today. We have, I think, solved the problem. I'm not being hyperbolic. Let me just explain to you. First, no one comes out and says, guess what, guys, girls, you're leaving the military, you're going into the private sector. There's huge gaps between the two. No one says that, right? And it's obvious if you kind of step back and you go, wow, they really are different ecosystems, right? So why are we telling military members, you're good to go, you're plug and play, you'll fit in any organization and do great, when it is utter nonsense? So that's one real objection that me and Aaron have to the system, is that it's being set up poorly, which means it's disempowering the military member, the military spouse, because they think they're good to go, just like you articulated a moment ago as well, right? You're like, we're good. And then you kind of find out as you get into that environment, like, whoa, we're not good, right? And that was the same with me. And I had from outward appearance, phenomenal success. But inside I was like, what in the hell is going on? Why didn't anyone tell me that these roles are so different and the environment's different? That is why I created PreVeteran. It took a long time to, disassemble or deconstruct, whatever, word you want to use, and go, here's the problem. So I think we've very clearly articulated the fact that, yes, it's a dumpster fire in the current model, does not have to be that way. And now we've proven it for 2 years. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, just to sort of add on to that, I mean, I think there's a lot of well-intentioned programs that we run out there that just, we don't necessarily evaluate and follow up with, right? And the federal government's notoriously bad about this, is that we'll implement a program or start doing a thing, and then we won't actually evaluate its efficacy. For instance, I just did a FOIA request for SkillBridge back in March. I got my response back less than a month ago, and the entity who should be collecting data on that program basically is not, and they kicked the responsibility down to the service branches, and they said, hey, help this gentleman with his FOIA requests. And so far, the responses I've gotten back are not the question I asked. So basically what I'm getting back from that and from other feedback I've seen, including the TAP program, is that we're great at implementing programs, and some of them are actually great programs. Like, I think SkillBridge is a fantastic program. I didn't do a FOIA request to try to tear down the program. I did a FOIA request to just ask the question, are we actually measuring this taxpayer funded program, measuring how well it's working, or did we just throw something out there and we're taking a step back and not really knowing? And so I guess the question I pose out there is just, who's doing the after action report on military transition? Because I don't see it happening. And as you know, even then, I mean, I've done exercises in the military. And again, to reiterate, we're notoriously bad at this stuff, because we'll do an after action report. We'll do an exercise and we'll say, hey, here's our lessons learned from this exercise that we did. Here's how we can improve things. And then I'll show it to somebody and they'll say, oh yeah, that's the same comments we got from the last year. And that's when you throw your hands up in the air. You're like, what? Why are we doing the same things, making the same mistakes, and we're just okay with that? Like, I think for Jason and I, that stuff deeply bothers us. And that's why we're so involved with this, is why is no one going upstream of all these downstream issues? Why is no one going to the source and saying, hey, I think we could fix this a lot earlier on and prevent a whole lot of issues? Not just employment, by the way. We're talking health and wellness and a myriad of other things, relationships, mental health and well-being. I mean, these things can all be contextualized for someone who's transitioning out of the military. And we kind of do that in the course. But just to introduce the idea, like, who's doing the after action report for military transition and what does that look like? Because I don't know that we are at all.
Hey, a quick comment, Stu, before you jump in. Like, let me also say, because I'm not sure if your listeners are, individuals or some employers, employees, or whatever. Aaron's exactly right. And imagine if, what we're saying now is the untrained individual that doesn't get this, specific training that we provide that gives them self-awareness, new language, new mindset, new understanding of the private sector as a beginning standpoint. A couple years before they get out, they're going to flow into organizations, right? They're going to into SkillBridges, into corporate environments, into higher ed environments, or like you guys, into entrepreneurship. And they're going to be going, wait, I mean, like the companies then have to deal with the fallout of that. The higher ed institutions have to deal with the fallout from that. If you're an entrepreneur, that's burdened by you completely, right? So it's really important we do go upstream and start talking about this, which is why, it's great to talk to you guys.
Hey, Stu, before you ask what I know will be a very insightful, intelligent, well-articulated question, I do want to make one point here. So Stu and I, and I know Aaron and Jason, our heart is not to bash the government. Like, I think Jason made an amazing point. The numbers that you're dealing with are huge numbers of individuals, and there is no one size fits all. You have 05s, 06s, admirals transitioning. And there's the executive program and all that kind of, get it. And then you have the, E3s, E4s transitioning. And some, in my case, there were some administrative separations that I did on even younger service members that are also going through. So you have this whole, you have to deal with this huge number. So this is not bashing anybody. And I can also say from the perspective of a commanding officer of a unit having to manage the SkillBridge, I never reported. It was all my decision at the 05 level, whether or not I could personally take the hit of a skill bridge application and approval. I never reported anything to anybody beyond. I didn't even go up to the next level. I didn't go to the Commodore and say, hey, is this cool? Like, it was all on me. I was like, yep, we can or we can't. The entire policy for the command was rewritten by me and my team while we were there. And so there is no bigger level. And I wouldn't expect there to be, and I'm not advocating for there to be. The one point I want to make is us as individuals, and what Stu and I talk about ad nauseum, is in personal intentionality, because quite frankly, the military does not care about the relational stresses in your household. And I'm not saying that because they're callous. I'm saying, are they going to care for 1 million plus people's relational hardships in their individual? No, that's on us. So there are resources, masterminds or self-education, or this amazing program that we're going to get into, that it's incumbent on us to go into and be like, hey, I need to open my own eyes and recognize the government can't handle this. And so what am I going to do about it? And that's what I love about what you guys are doing. It's you're giving an option for us to take full responsibility and intentionality and go do something about it, to be fully prepared. And even then, there's going to be some emotional things that we're going to have to deal with, when we get out, loss of mission, whatnot. But that's what I just want to make that point of, they are never going to solve the problem for us. And so it's guys like you who create a resource that we can now proactively take advantage of and have some ownership and regain some control.
Yeah, 100%. Let me make a comment to a few things you said. First, unfortunately, right, when you talk about the researchers that go into the transition space, been around since 91, unfortunately, and this is a unfortunate byproduct of that exact system we just talked about, the 1.0 model, they've essentially, honestly, given up on the individual. It's 100% true, right? Because I've talked to the people that make these policies in trying to just, convince them that there is another better way. They have literally given up on the individual. Example, when I talk to them, they think that the only way it could be truly effective is if you do one-on-one counseling. Right now, I get that from a government standpoint, but that from the lens of they've given up on you and don't think you could be autonomous. Okay, I could see that. But that's also completely disempowering, which I just do not believe in. What we have found out in our programming is if you allow the service member through some very creative neuroscience-based approaches, make them aware of what they're thinking, and then have them decide whether they need to change the way they think or not to be more effective, we're finding that they're making the turn very quickly to go, oh my goodness, those two systems we talked about are so different. I really need to begin thinking differently. They have to come at it from their own volition. They need to decide to change their mindset. But when they do, it is unbelievable. I mean, the turnaround that they can do with that one tool that we deploy in our programming makes all the difference in the world, because after that, you can imagine the learning is much more efficient. It's much more intentional. It's much more individual. Right? Because we were just talking about being aviators, right? There's a tool we have that we call the military mindset heuristic. When you talk about the two different environments, the military environment is so unique. And when you're in the military environment and have done 1 million cognitive iterations, meaning thinking cycles, you've developed heuristics, which mean a heuristic is when a neural pathway is so well traveled in your mind, it requires no thought on your part. It just delivers a message to your head. Now, imagine this, right? And you've done this, and I've done this, is when someone doesn't tell you about a heuristic and how it plays out in your head and your thinking, if you don't understand how to self-regulate that, you're going to think everything people are telling you is total bullshit, right? Hey, this is really how the private sector works. Oh, no, it doesn't. Even if they don't say that with their mouth, they're thinking that, and it comes in a big booming voice, and it becomes a complete obstacle to their success. So we're able to unravel that very successfully now after doing it for 2 years. And once they do that and remove that obstacle, man, they just take off. And we have lots of examples for how that's happened.
I love that, man. There's some heuristics that we kind of figured out the hard way. which is kind of why we started, the mastermind group, through some of the lessons learned. And it's the stuff that they don't talk about in TAP class, right? It's those heuristics that, the idea of like a community, right? Like in the military, you're given a community. Like you're given a squadron, a command, a group of officers that you hang out with, the family members, the spouses. You're forced into that community, and you all have a mission and a purpose. Well, day one of leaving the military, that all goes away unless you are very intentional about maintaining that. And they don't talk about that kind of stuff. And so, like, that was one of the things that David and I really found out the hard way. All that goes away, right? And there's a lot of other things that go away. I'm curious from your end what you guys are seeing when you're having, men and women join your community and your educational platform. I know so many people, when I've talked to people, David and I have in challenge to try to reach out to people, seeing people with, transitioning military on their profile on LinkedIn or whatever. We reach out to them and just try to give them some advice, just a way to serve. But most of them are just so focused on career, so focused on the job. Where's the paycheck going to come from? And so I'm curious from your perspective and what you've seen, what else is a challenge to them that they're not seeing, that people aren't talking about, that we can, explain here quickly, that maybe could give them some ideas on like starting to focus there beyond just the paycheck?
Yeah. I mean, we talk about in the course the emotional cycle of change. So the common emotions you go through with any major life transition, that's a big part of what we're discussing. But I think it really goes back to the core of our course, is that mindset piece. And like Jason said, that barrier that you don't realize you have is built up over years or decades or however long you've been in the military. It's not that anything you did in the military is problematic. It's that how your mind operates in the background without you realizing it is that it leans on long-term memories to make current decisions. So if all of your memories are based on military experiences you've had, then your brain is automatically going to lean on that. And in the absence of that, if you have no military-related memories, then it's the other end of the spectrum, which is the opposite of what Jason talked about. He was talking about the military mindset heuristic. And on the other end of that spectrum is the brain gap. And that's where people just don't know what they don't know. And I think that's one of those big scary parts about transition. You're like, I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't know what it is. And they just have no clue. So how does your brain work in that environment? Well, it kind of goes haywire. You really reach out into the external environment and you seek out information. And the problem with that is when you don't have context or experience with what you're trying to seek, then you could take in some really bad information and you could buy it hook, line, and sinker. For instance, you could listen to your XO or your senior leader tell you about military transition when they've never done it themselves. You could listen to that advice and be like, man, he's completely right. But he has no idea. So he gave you bad advice. Or you can look at, for someone who has an agenda, that maybe it's someone who wants to place you at a particular company and they make a fee off placing you at that company. They may or may not have your best interests at heart. Who knows? But at the end of the day, their business is serving a customer that's not you. So like you were saying, accountability and responsibility for owning your transition. Yes, 100%. Our tendency is to look for another set of orders after the military, and we don't even realize we're doing it. It's like, someone just tell me what to do next. What do I do next? And guess what? No one's going to tell you. You're not going to get another set of orders. And if you lean into that mentality, it's not going to serve you well, because you're going to end up doing something that you actually don't want to do. And so we try to align our messaging and our program with, first, starting off with you and your family. What do you value? What's important to you? And how do we achieve your personal goals during this military transition process? And how do we make what you desire for you and your family become a reality through this supportive program and through the entire system? Because we're not just a course, like you said, community. We have a PreVeteran alumni community. Once you finish the course, you matriculate automatically into our community. And that's something you maintain beyond your transition and after. And that becomes a big network and a way to stay tied in. But that's a huge barrier that Jason pointed out, is that mindset piece. And we know it to be true because people come to us, first thing they ask is, hey, how do I write a resume? And it's like, do you even know what you want to do? No, I have no clue, but I just want a resume. It's like, okay. Or you say, hey, I want to be a project manager. They seem a little more focused, right? I have my PMP. I'm going to go be a project manager. Okay. In what industry? Well, what do you mean? Well, it's different to be a project manager in software engineering than it is to be in manufacturing or in real estate. These are completely different things, and you need to have that level of focus to have any kind of clarity on what's next for you. So that's part of why we deliberately created this entire system, to give them the tools and the framework to figure out what that looks like for them.
Let me hum a few more bars on there. Aaron hit it like perfectly. So when we started originally talking, we talked about a course, right? And that course was really the beginning of our evolution a couple of years ago. So it was called the Employment Prep Course. And then we rolled people into the salary, negotiate the highest possible salary and benefits. What we found out from our students actually is they're like, we love this. What else do you have for us? And we're like, geez, I guess we better make some stuff, right? So it's really kind of student desired content. So that's where the system came about. And it's really important for your listeners to understand this because, look, we're kind of poking around the problem, right? You don't have enough time. When someone says own your transition and you need to do this and you need to do that, that's anecdotal. You need a program and you need a system that actually works, because what actually has to happen, our formula is really good, right? Because the employment prep course is now a gateway into our system, which is our community, right? So to hum a few bars on that, the employment prep course is a 5-week virtual course. We know that people are busy, and we also know we need to get to them more than a year out, because in that year-long kind of, I guess, approach to your post-military landing, just like us aviators, right? As soon as you put the nose down and pull the throttles back, right, your life gets busy. It was really nice and quiet when you were straight and level flight. Yeah, you got to change altitude a little bit. But when you hit that 12-month and you're in your descent, man, you're talking to ATC, you're doing crew coordination, you're doing checklists, right? It's very analogous to your transition. You're doing way too much, and no one's giving you a roadmap to do that. That's why we're getting people 1 to 3 years out when they're in that straight and level part of their career where they could do a mini intervention to get them doing a new language, new mindset, new understanding of the private sector. And then once they have those tools and they're in our community, here's what they're doing. They're exploring a bunch of different industries to see what's a good fit. You can't just go to one and go, this is it, because what you're going to find out is that isn't it, right? So we've had several students now that kind of pivoted within our community to 3 or 4 different industries. And then as you get toward your employment window, which is the 3 to 4 months out, you got multiple companies in the desired industry you want competing for you, which means you're a valuable property, which means your salary point just went higher, right? So we think this is the model moving forward. It's just no one knows about it yet. And the fact that we just talked about TAP and the confusion, people say it's a dumpster fire, and people are believing it because they just don't know there's a better way. And not only is it a better way, it's better for literally everybody. Better for the individual, better for their health, better for their family, better for the higher ed institution, better for the employer, better for the national workforce, better for the veteran community. I mean, it's literally hitting every single one of those. And it's really, we're excited about getting it out because we want to have, now that we've nailed it, let's say on the modeling, now we just want to scale it, and we want to start impacting more people's lives as many as possible in a very controlled way to make sure we're still delivering just exceptional kind of training to empower them to make better decisions for themselves and their family.
Yeah, I love that, what both of you said, and what comes to mind. So Stu and I effectively, in the mastermind, we guide, and then I do, I personally coach one-on-one. And I think the most valuable thing in what we do, and Aaron, you nailed it, is just ask good questions, right? Man, I really want to, I can't tell you the number of people in my command who sent up, requests, and I see all these Navy cool things to get their PMP before they get out. Like everybody wants to get their PMP. And it really is a valuable question to say, awesome, nothing against the PMP. Why? Like, what do you, not only what industry or why, like, do you really want to be a project manager? Like, I looked at the PMP program, I was like, because I kind of fell into that for a second. I was like, I have zero desire to do anything with this. Like, I'm not going to waste any capacity, but I was blessed enough to have, like, to the next point, I was blessed enough to have a community. And at that time, the community we were creating wasn't, the size it is now, but I had a Stu, right? Which, you can judge that how you want,
which
but
is
I did
awesome.
have somebody, it's awesome. But I had people in my corner that I could have a conversation with. And I'll tell you, the community piece is huge. I mean, Stu will tell you, I won't look at a car purchase without just running it by Stu, just a different perspective, right? Or looking at, even like a seasoned snowboard pass. Now that's a given. We're going to do that. But I mean, we talk about it, right? Like, we're like, okay, dude, like, let's just analyze and assess this thing. And it's not like we go into a deep dive on every single purchase, but you have people in your community who you can at least say, does this make sense? Or you have people that can say, hey, dude, why? Like, tell me why. Like, let's talk about it. What industry? I don't know. I never thought about that. Well, it's a pretty basic question. It's pretty critical, right? Well, I want 100 doors. Why? Never thought about it. Just someone said, as a real estate investor, 100 doors cool. So I'm going to pursue. Like, is it really cool? Because that doesn't sound cool to me.
You guys you probably see everybody going to get their master's degree, right? Like that's the.
I'm gonna get an MBA.
Yeah, I'm gonna get an MBA. Like,
yeah,
every academy grad.
Every academy grad. I'm gonna get an MBA.
I'm gonna get an MBA.
Can't tell you why, but they want one.
Yeah,
100%. But it is a critical question because, and again, we're not poking fun. It's more, you're going to now dedicate time and resources, time being a key resource, and you're going to dedicate energy to achieving this thing. And in reality, is it going to serve you? And one of the things when we reach out to these, Stu said we reach out to transitioning vets. If you put that in your profile, we're going to probably reach out to you. But really, when I talk to them, I'm like, hey, just curious, like, what has anybody ever asked you, what do you want? No. Okay, let's talk about that. If you answer this question, I don't know you, you don't know me from Adam. I don't really, what you want is inconsequential to me. But nobody sat me down and said, what do you want? They said things like, hey, in order to get your capstone from TAP, you have to do a resume. Like, you have to do a resume. It is a requirement. If you don't turn it in, you don't get capstone, you don't pass. So again, like, let's just have this conversation. We can never talk again. If you just just give yourself 5 minutes to deeply consider, because that's going to run into an hour, most likely. What do you want? And what would make you happy and your family? That question could change the entire trajectory of that individual's transition and potentially life, right, after the military. And so I think it's a really important point that you make. And at a minimum, we should be seeking individuals like you who've done it, who have experience like that. That my favorite thing you said, you ask an XO who's never transitioned about transition. Like, I was very careful as a CO and an XO with my position to recognize the way people thought of it, to never say something like, oh, that's dumb. Why would you get out? Like, I never say anything like that. And when people said it to me, I challenged it. Like, why is it dumb? Like, you don't care if I get out. You're trying to pad your retention numbers. Like, let's be honest. You really don't care, right? Like, you don't care. What's my wife's name? You don't know. Awesome. Okay, let's go from there. So it's surrounding yourself with the right people, and then being in a community and just like being challenged to question these things. And I'm curious for you guys too, because I'm very intrigued. Is there a branch of pre-vet, like post-vet? Like, are there people where Stu and I are, who could go through the program? Is that available as well?
So let me kind of hit on a few things there. So now that, you know, Aaron and I through PreVeteran have new tools, all those comments you made fit very contextually within how we see the market now. So when you're talking about, you know, the PMP, or you're talking about getting a master's degree, this falls very specifically in what Aaron described as the brain gap, right? Because if you don't know what you don't know, you are super open to influence from other people who say, you need this. And then again, that goes back to the heuristic of, you know, the military. I'm used to people kind of telling me what to do, just to be honest, right? It isn't here or there. It's just true. You become very, if you're not aware of how your thinking works and your brain works, you are going to be subject to those messages. And you'll find people on LinkedIn all the time going, I need to get a degree. I need to get my PMP. I need to get my Lean Six Sigma. I need to get this. I need to get that. Well, why? I got to cover all bases. And you're like, oh my God, you know, like if you have someone on the outside, remember, and you're going to the outside looking at that going, that's a crazy person. They are all over the place, right? And I hate to say this, right? But employers look at that and go, that has really challenged decision-making. Do I want to hire that person? So this is where the self-awareness really becomes an important piece, and you got to have the tools for it. We have those tools, very specific tools, because if you don't understand how your brain is functioning, very normally, by the way, this is extremely normal, extremely basic cognitive neuroscience. But as soon as you understand that, you go, oh, that's where that comes from. And you can begin kind of labeling those things as, ooh, I don't need to go there. I don't need to go there. It's just, it's such a critical part of this. And then all these conversations we're having out on LinkedIn or in groups and networks and things like that become really refined around the individual, where the individual can, with these tools and with a program, take absolute intentional control of their post-military life. And once they gain that competency a little bit, they want more. And once they get really good at iterating this approach, because it's the only way to do it, because you got to go from one system to another, which requires massive amount of iterations, which means you need a community, you need support, you need tools, you need a framework. This is where we know this is going to be successful. So again, super excited about the expansion of this.
I love it, man. I love what I know you guys are on a timeline. You know, what would you say to the military veteran, you know, the military guy 2 to 3 years out? What's step one for them to kind of get plugged into what you guys are doing?
So there's a couple different things. One is our 2.0 system. I mean, and that's on our website. And I know, Stu, I appreciate you're going to put a link into it to that. The other thing I want to talk to is those folks that are in organizations right now and are the veterans who have been through this experience themselves, and they know there's gaps, right? No one's kind of come out and said, hey, guess what? We got gaps. Well, guess what we do, right? Start talking to your organization about that and how it could be better, because PreVeteran now offers corporate training, right? And that's really important. We have a new course called the Skill Bridge Optimizer course. Like Aaron was talking about, what we've learned over those 2 years of training individuals to be better, more aligned, better mindset, is if you don't do that, you go into an organization and then the organization has to deal with the fallout in longer onboarding process, costlier because you're not retaining, you're leaving the job 4 times faster than your general public counterparts, right? So companies are kind of scratching their heads going, well, my boss told me we need to have a skill bridge, so I'm instituting it. Maybe I should look at the efficacy if it's actually working or not. So you can see there's a lot of dysfunction that's system-wide right now, and we're addressing it from the individual side and now the corporate side. One more final thing, Stu. We also we are a for-profit company. The other thing we want to tell people about is we want to expand access to our military transition 2.0 system. We are looking for family foundations, high net worth individuals, contributors for our sister PreVeteran Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. So we can give you that link as well. They could do donations on that. That organization is specifically for scholarships to scholarship people into our program. And we have relationships with like the Air Force Sergeants Association and a couple others who then can bring their people into our ecosystem, and then we get to expand at scale, right? So that really becomes an important part, is getting access to folks that potentially couldn't pay it or just aren't able to, but we want to make sure that we get them impacted as well.
I love it, man. Last question before we sign off. Who is this for? Is it for every single military person out there, female, male, E105? Like, is it for everybody? Like, who is the target?
It's for everybody. We kind of, after doing this for 2 years, understand now the conventional research space says an E4 is different than an O7. We don't agree with that. Fundamentally at the brain level, everyone's the same in the military. And if you zoom out and go, guess why? Everyone came in the military as an individual. 20% of your individuality was wiped out, supplanted with the Air Force, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Space Force kind of thinking process. That needs to be untangled as you move back to being an individual. So that's actually way deeper than rank, age, and all those other things. I will tell you, our demographic that defines us are folks that are married with kids, right? And we're about 50-50 enlisted and officer. I know that's a lot of surprise to many folks probably listening, but it's because they're married with kids and they know that they can't take a risk, right? Like what you were saying before, where's the paycheck going to come from? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? That's a lot of worry. That's a lot of concern. So that's why we created the system, not just a course, a system that addresses every major milestone in your transition, to include employment, by the way. That's our one we've been doing for a couple of years. But so it is literally for everybody, but definitely the ones coming to us are the married with kids.
And it's a family affair too. Like anybody who signs up, we want them and their spouse in the course. So their spouse gets added in for free, because we want them to have the conversations together. And we acknowledge that people coming out of the military, again, they're used to getting orders and they're used to kind of keeping their family aware of what's going on, but where they go and what they do is sort of subservient to whatever the military needs. And when you're getting out of the military, of course, you want to change that dynamic and make sure that your whole family is in agreement on what is next for you and your family. And so you're not just coming to your wife one day and saying, hey, honey, we're moving to Ohio and I got a job here, and she's totally taken aback. You want to make sure you actually intentionally plan that out together. You're in agreement on what that looks like. And that's why we have spouses join the course for free. Start initiating those conversations more than a year out from your transition. That way, it'll be a much smoother ride, I guarantee it, when it comes to your relationship with your spouse and your family.
Hey, gents, I know we're coming up on time. You have important meetings following directly, probably not as important as a podcast, just throw that out there. But I just want to thank you guys. This is such critical work. And I know that, the number of individuals that it impacts is far reaching, right? You have your students, but as you highlighted, mostly married, mostly with kids. So this is a generational impact to these children as their mothers and fathers transition out of the military as well. And just to see that transition, to see a healthy transition, to see intentionality, mindset, all these different things that you guys are addressing are hugely, hugely powerful, critical, and highly impactful. So I just want to thank you guys so much, not only for joining us, but for the work that you do. And I truly look forward to future conversations, future just collaborations to really get after this issue that what I love is you guys have found a solution for. And that is absolutely critical, super important, super powerful, and just appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys and gals, we'll put PreVeteran website and the nonprofit organization in our show notes. Reach out to them, have conversations, check it out. They're doing amazing work. Jason, Aaron, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Take action,
Thanks,
men.
gents.
See ya. Man, we have exciting news. We're opening up the next house of the Kinetic Man Mastermind. I tell you, it's the most important hour of the week that I go to, that I attend. I change every single week for the better to become the best husband, the best father, the best friend, and the best leader in our community. This is a time that you can choose to make a major impact in your life. Go to to thekineticman.com and sign up. It's an application. It is exclusive. We are looking for the right man to take action and join us to be the hero of their journey. Come join us, thekineticman.com. Do it.
Thank you for listening to the Kinetic Man podcast. If you are growth-minded, community-focused, and willing to take uncommon action to redefine success and live an abundant life, visit our website at www.thekineticman.com to see all the ways we could connect.
And on our website, you can find more information on everything we're doing, like joining our Meetup page to get the details on our webinars and our local Thursday gatherings here in Colorado. From our site, you can also find more information on and sign up for the next Kinetic Man retreat and the next house of our mastermind group. Finally, we always appreciate your love and support. Please share this episode and go rate us on your favorite podcast player of choice.
Thank you again. Now go take uncommon action.